everybody, welcome to a Whiskey Wednesday special edition. We've got our friend Lily here to talk about a really cool kind of pre-order situation we've got going on. So this is a little bit of new territory for us, but really excited to bring some really cool spirits to you from around the world. So Lily, you want to tell us a little bit about what we got today?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi everyone, I'm Lily. I work for a company called High Road Spirits. We import lots of international beverages from around the world. Today we're going to be specializing in Japanese allocated single malts and some fun Irish whiskey at the end. So first off, we have Akashi Distillery. They are one of our smaller producers, a whopping 7 people total. So imagine a cute elderly Japanese couple that hired their nephew as their 7th employee. They're located in Kobe, Japan, coming from where the famous Kobe beef comes from. So beautiful coastal environment. And you'll notice some gorgeous maritime influence throughout their entire whiskey line. First off, we have Akashi Single Malt. This is going to be our flagship single malt coming from this producer. 100% barley aged in brandy, sherry, and ex-bourbon barrels. Next, we have Akashi Sherry Cask, which is our single malt aged exclusively in Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso sherry casks. Because there's only 7 people working at this distillery, we only get about 200 bottles of this annually. Finally, we have Akashi Sake Cask. This is our single malt aged exclusively in ex-bourbon barrels and Kijoshu Sake barrels. Kijoshu Sake is kind of like a dessert sake. It provides this really interesting savory flavor profile, so it's almost like a food-driven whiskey. It's kind of funky on the nose, super savory. Yeah, let's taste some.
Yeah, so this is what we have in the glass first, the sake cask. And on the nose, you get like a little, that savory note you said is kind of interesting, almost like a little bit of bacon grease, and you really get the maritime influence too. I mean, there's that briny saltiness that you get on like a good scotch that's been aged, next to the ocean in Scotland. It picks up a little bit of that briny saltiness, and I get that here too.
It reminds me of Parmesan cheese on the nose.
Ooh. Yeah, I could see that.
In addition to bacon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. So there's definitely a big sweetness up front, but that kind of briny, salty note is right on the back of your tongue. The finish just lingers. I mean, it's still hanging out. I mean, that's a really, really nice whiskey.
Yeah. It's quite unlike anything other coming from the Akashi portfolio. And quite frankly, I don't know of any other producers that have a Kijoshu Sake barrel. So this is the only one to my knowledge.
That's awesome. Let's see. So coming up next, looks like we've got... Can you tell us a little bit about these next couple?
Yeah, so this is a completely different Japanese whiskey producer. This is Mars Komagatake. So Komagatake is the name of the tallest peak at which Mars Distillery sits at the base of. They are located in between the Central and Southern Alps in Nagano Prefecture. So if you guys ski or snowboard, this is Winter Olympics 98. Because they are located in the mountains, they source all their water from the mountain glaciers surrounding the distillery. Komagatake is not only the name of the tallest peak, but it's also the name of their single malt line. So again, 100% barley, and this one is aged in sherry, ex-bourbon, and New American oak barrels. We do have 2 featuring today. This is going to be the 2021, and we also will have the 2022 edition. Mars Distillery is the 4th largest Japanese whiskey distillery, which sounds really big, but in comparison to our largest competitive set, our first and second Japanese whiskey distilleries are aging about 1 million barrels and 2 million barrels, respectively. Mars is 4th place, aging 5,000, so it is quite a drastic drop-off, meaning everyone Mars and smaller is just that much smaller as well, including these guys that I mentioned earlier. So because Mars Distillery is not the largest, neither the smallest, this allows them to be in this space where they can experiment around with all these different single malts. Sometimes you'll see a bunch of different variations of Mars Komagatakes on the shelf, and that's just Mars experimenting to see what they can come up with. So the 2021, as I mentioned, majority sherry cask. So if you guys like your whiskeys on the more delicate, prettier side, this one has a lot of elegant stone fruit notes. The 2022 will be aged in port wine, sherry, and ex-bourbon barrels. That one has a little bit more heat to it, and it's a little bit more viscous as well. And then moving on to our next distillery. This is Ichiro's Malt. For those of you that have dabbled in the space of Japanese whiskeys, you might be familiar with this name. He holds the world record for the most expensive set of Japanese whiskeys ever auctioned. So Ichiro Akuto, his family's been making beverages since the 1600s, much like all of these producers here. And his grandfather owned a whiskey distillery called Hanyu. Hanyu unfortunately closed its doors in 2000, and they were going to dump all of the whiskeys down the drain. So Ichiro worked really hard to inherit his grandfather's old whiskey stock, starts tasting them together, and created a series, blended them all together to make the series the playing card series. So 54 bottles modeled after playing cards. Imagine Two of Hearts, Eight of Spades, Joker, etc. That set auctioned off for $1.5 million in 2020. Again, the world record for the most expensive set of Japanese whiskeys ever auctioned. And that was before he was even distilling anything. Everything was coming from his grandfather's distillery, and he won 3 World Whiskey Awards out of the set of 54. That is foreshadowing this here, which is the Malt & Grain Limited Edition. This is the only blend that he does, and figured if I'm going to make a blend, I'm going to go full out with it. Everything else coming from his distillery is going to be a single malt or a single cask. So this is majority Japanese single malt that is 10 plus years in age. It is blended with world whiskeys that inspire him, including American bourbon, Canadian rye, Scotch, and Irish whiskeys. World whiskeys that inspire him. They are purchased, brought back to Japan, further aged for several years. So the world whiskeys are somewhere between 10 to 40 years in age before being blended together with the 10-plus-year-old Japanese single malt. So for those of you guys that are indecisive or want a little bit of everything, this guy's for you.
That's awesome.
Next, with our Japanese whiskeys, we have Kanosuke. This is one of our newest Japanese whiskey distilleries. They're coming from Kagoshima, Japan, which is southwest Japan, closer to South Korea. They started out making rice shochu in the 1800s, and within the past several years started dabbling in the space of gins and Japanese whiskeys. They debuted their first ever single malt as a 700 ml last year. But they've already won 3 World Whiskey Awards, and we have 2 of those products here today. We have the 2021 as well as the 2022. Both of them are going to be aged in rice shochu casks from their distillery, and this one, the 2022, will have additional sherry cask aging. Again, new producer, so these are quite limited. We only got 1,200 bottles of the 2021 in the entire United States and 3,000 bottles of the 2022 for the entire US. So definitely snag those if you guys can.
Yeah, definitely something worth going for. We're going to try this one here real quick. So this is the 2022 release, and I'm excited to try this one. Ooh. Big kind of bright red fruit notes on the nose. Definitely some kind of darker dried fruits in there too.
Yeah, like orange marmalade.
Yeah, definitely. So that's a really interesting nose. Oh man, it's got some awesome mid-palate spice that really just kind of sits on your tongue, almost coats your tongue a little bit with that spice. But the sweet kind of fruit notes up front really kind of balance it out. It's really just balanced whiskey. You got a lot going for it. I mean, that's something you could, finish a couple glasses of, not realize you've gone through it already.
Yeah, absolutely. The ABV is a little high on these too, I believe. I think we're looking in the high 58 and 59. Yeah, it starts out a little earthy, but it finishes very bright. Orange and lemon on the end.
Definitely. Yeah,
and honey.
And even with the higher ABV, I mean, it's not hot. You don't get like the Kentucky Hug or anything like that. But definitely a sessionable 59% ABV whiskey for sure. And then here on the end, we've got something kind of really different and interesting. You want to tell us what we got here?
Yeah. All right, so this is Cullowen whiskey. We're going to end this by speaking about Irish whiskeys. So Cullowen is Ireland's smallest distillery. It has a whopping number of 1 person behind the entire company. So this is Brendan Carty. He is quite young. He actually started out his life as an architect in his earlier years, and then started dabbling in the space of, or started going down this rabbit hole of Irish whiskey history. During this time, he's discovering all of these ancient recipes that were used long before your major Irish whiskey conglomerates decided that their products were going to be the standard, aka Irish whiskey laws. So he started recreating these recipes that he discovered until the Irish government came along and knocked on his door saying, hey, you can't really call this pot still Irish whiskeys because your recipes have a little too much oats in your proportions than we allow. So he actually went and started fighting to have these recipes appreciated by the government, because there's nothing more authentic than these recipes that were made long before in ancient whiskey history. So because of that, he has quite a following. There is the Cullowen cult that you guys are welcome to join on Facebook. There's about 4,000, 5,000 people. And he has this major following in Ireland to the point where people are snatching up his single malts whenever they are released within the first 60 to 90 seconds. So it's kind of like Taylor Swift tickets.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And so the one that we have today, we'll be getting a lot of different products from Brendan at some point. But this one here is going to be the Rum and Raisin. Currently, he's partnered up with the Great Northern Distillery, which is local. They're located in the Mourne Mountains of County Down, by the way. And so this is the Rum and Raisin. So it's aged for 5 years in Pedro Jimenez sherry casks, as well as Cullowen rum casks.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, the nose is just super kind of honey sweetness, a little bit of stone fruit. I mean, just a really beautiful nose. Just kind of want to sit there and just, chew on it for a little bit. Yeah, on the palate, I mean, the honey sweetness really follows. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. It's not like lingering forever, but just, I mean, a real big burst of flavor right up front.
Mm-hmm. It does have a long finish, though.
Oh, that's special. And, I mean, this is a one-man operation, so it's really cool to see what, one person can kind of do, going up against authorities like the Irish government to, change and, bring back some of the history that is Irish whiskey. It's a really cool, concept and cool project. So we're really excited to be able to offer this to you guys. So all of these will be available for pre-order. At the bottom of this email, you'll see a few links, and we'll be taking pre-orders for these for the next 2 weeks up until the 28th. And so come on down, give them a shot. Cheers.
Cheers. Kampai. Salente.